Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one starts with the R?
Well, let me tell you.
I feel funny.
Well, we're really an oligarchy, but if you want to use these two, democracy or a democratic society or republic, you mentioned the word demos, people, or Cortian is to rule.
Yes.
So this is the democracy, okay? The majority rule. That's what a democracy is.
Right.
The flaw in democracy is that the majority can't be restrained, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if more than half can be persuaded,
Yes.
then they're the ones that rule.
Right.
All right. In a democracy, the lower class grows bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
The poor become the winners. Diversity is supreme. People are free to do what they want and live how they want. People can even break the laws if they choose. This appears to be very similar to anarchy.
That
Sound like our country.
Sound
Yeah.
like Chicago Police Department.
Right, yeah, exactly. So the word democracy do not appear. Watch this. The word democracy do not appear in the Declaration of Independence nor in the Constitution.
No, it's republic.
Because the founders did everything they could to keep us from a democracy.
Right.
Because so basically mob rule, then anarchy, then finally tyranny under an allegory.
And you know why? Because that's what had happened after they declared independence.
Absolutely, from England.
Because they had no law. Indiana had their, well, I'll just use this as an example. Each state had their own money.
Yeah.
And they could not trade within the country. The nation was broke.
Right.
Under the laws that was written under the Articles of Confederation, it was a flawed document. It would not work. It was so much chaos. It was tyranny.
Right.
So they finally had to construct this Constitution, and they had to decide and make laws for every little bitty thing to ensure that it would unify the United States. Because soon after France helped us defeat England, France was like, I'm coming for that land because they're still weak.
Yeah.
That's where you get the French-Indian War.
Sure.
And England came back again.
Yeah. Yes, that's good. Now here's a republic, which Latin res, res is thing, and publica means public. Okay, so that means republic is the law. That's what it means. So the government is limited by law, which leaves the people alone. Okay, so the Romans built. Go back to the Roman Empire. They built a republic. That's what they were. Rome became wealthy, but the people forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitations of law. The government had limited, persuasion. Right. So when government gets bigger, the freedom of the people recedes.
Right.
So once the government creates subsidies and aids to the people, and the people begin to rely on government for more and more, we're talking about the Democrats.
Yes.
The social
small government. Yeah, that's what.
Therefore, the people are traded freedom for security. So the more the people needed, and they wanted.
501c3.
Come on!
And the churches.
Come on!
Yeah.
So Rome fell because they went from a republic to a democracy and ended up in an oligarchy under the progression of the Caesars.
And why did they take history out of the school?
Yeah.
Because if we don't know history, we're doomed to repeat ourselves. Look at what's happening.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And that's why it says, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
there you
God.
go. Yeah.
Indivisible.
Yes.
Indivisible.
Yes.
Indivisible.
They were visible. Sorry.
Indivisible with
Indivisible.
liberty.
With
Right.
liberty and justice
for
Yes.
all.
for a couple.
Justice for a few.
And the under God
Just
came.
us. A few.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the under God's line came later on in the 50s through Truman.
Yes.
It wasn't there originally.
But I think that's
What
what
was
we.
there?
It wasn't
That's
there.
new to me.
Oh yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
I learned something today.
I'll tell you why in
I
a minute.
think that's what the church is right now, because the church was afraid that it was going to fail. So we gave in to what we call the 501c3.
Yes, sir.
Which means the government has a very much powerful word what to say to the church.
Yes, sir.
And we are ruled by the government.
If you take their subsidies.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And you want the breaks that come with the tax breaks.
Right.
And they can tell you what to do. Now
Yes.
the first, and I know this is not part of the thing.
Yes, it is.
No, yes, all of it.
But I use it's supposed to be the family structure first.
True.
Then the church structure.
Right.
Then the government and everything else. Now the government has we know the government is corrupt, correct?
Sure.
So the government has its hand in the church.
Yeah.
By the 501c3.
Right.
Then the government took a portion of the authority of the family away.
Yeah.
And now the government is running the house and the church at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I call it the institution. The governmental institution, the family institution, the penal institution, and all that.
Here's where knowing
up.
the right candidate is important.
That's right.
Because as much as we blame Bush for a whole lot of things, not his daddy,
right?
The last Bush,
the last one,
he was very friendly to the church because he never once backed down from his Christian faith as far as who he was.
That is true.
And you have to look. You could trace his record and find that his record was a whole lot different than the current sitting president's record when it comes to things of God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
As far as favor toward the church and the people. And so when we look at that, if you want a church to be progressive, productive, can you really have that if you take advantage of those governmental subsidies? Or will you be a church that totally walks by faith?
Yeah.
And if I have to render to Caesar what is Caesar's, I will render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and God's going to bless me anyway.
Here's what Joe Hill says: if we were a democracy, which is the majority rule, Al Gore would have been president.
That's the truth.
Popular vote. He is dead on. He is dead on. Now watch this. Now let's move this into what the church government is. Okay, and now we call it ecclesiastical polity. Okay,
right.
So we have monarchy, anarchy, oligarchy, democracy, tyranny. And then we have polity, Polity, which is we call it the ecclesiastical polity. Polity is the operation and governance structure of a church or Christian denomination. It also denotes the ministerial structure of the church and the authority relationships between churches. Polity is closely related to ecclesiology, the study of doctrine and theology related to church organizations. You're from the Baptist Church, Alvin, right?
A little bit.
Okay. So you kind of know the corporate, the governmental structure, right? In Church of God in Christ, right?
Correct.
So we are of the Episcopal polity.
Correct.
Okay, and here's why. The Episcopal polity is churches having Episcopal polity are governed by bishops. The title bishop comes from the Greek word episkopos, which translates as overseer.
Overseer.
So we have our superintendents, I think, we're called overseers.
Correct.
Okay. And that word overseer is also found in some of our translations in Timothy when it says he who desires the office of a bishop, that's an overseer.
So, which is also a pastor.
Absolutely. So in regard to Catholicism, bishops have authority over the diocese, and sometimes we used to call our jurisdictions dioceses or diocese. Okay,
diocese.
Which
and now we say jurisdictions.
You say jurisdictions, which is both sacramental and political, as well as performing ordinations, confirmations, and consecrations. The bishop supervises the clergy of the diocese and represents the diocese both secular and in the hierarchy of the church government. So the Church of God in Christ really is set up like the Catholic Church.
Yes.
You can go to a Catholic bookstore and find everything we need for Church of God in Christ.
Exactly, because that's what we use.
Yeah, we have the Episcopal,
including the investments and the whole 9 yards. That's good and that's bad.
Yes, it is.
Because they expensive.
So you got Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Anglican, Methodist, Lutheran, Pentecost, and Full Gospel, and Church of God in Christ. We're all up under that Episcopal polity. Now, the Baptist Church, you guys are governed by who?
They are governed by boards.
The deacon board?
Well, it depends. Board of trustees, deacon board, some of them. I'm not Baptist, so I was grew up Baptist.
Sure.
And the deacon board kind of ran things.
So you're not Baptist born, and when you die, you be Baptist?
Man,
I'm going to die saved. I'll come out of that corner.
Come out of that corner.
I'm too fat to hide.
Your feet too narrow?
Yeah. So you mentioned
but no. They had the trustees. As well as the deacons, and they had the governing, the governing heads. They operated under the Robert's Rules of Order.
Sure.
And the pastor was moderator and chief executive officer, but he had limited duties based upon how that board discerned what his duties are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he may not. Some pastors now in the Baptist Church could basically be a dictatorship, as Elder Davis says, Church of Living Christ is dictatorship, but he had to earn that power to be able to tap into the finances and govern and direct. Some churches, it's still the chairman of the deacon board.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of your churches that have legacies of pastors,
Mm-hmm.
where third generation.
Mm-hmm.
It is not to let you know. That's because sometimes they like the power they have, so they keep the pastors in place for the political purposes.
Yeah,
And
that's
there's
good.
either after that second or third generation, it's royalty. It's a family business,
Sure.
and they still play that game.
Yeah. Well,
So it's politics.
But then you're right, because Natalie kind of referred a little bit there. She says the Baptist churches are independent, which means the congregational rule.
Yes.
States.
That's something new.
Well,
No,
states
Baptist has always been
right. They
independent.
always been that. States
They
require
may be a
churches.
part of fellowships. And
Yeah.
they come together. They call them conventions. But
Absolutely.
they're
Right,
still
right,
independent,
right.
yes.
Because it was later that we called it. Now they call it jurisdictions.
Yeah, they do.
But
Before,
previously
yeah.
they didn't. It was not like
Right.
set up in the same order.
Well, no, they still had them. They had the National Baptist Conventions, and they had them segment off into different
In the
regions.
60s and the 70s.
Yes.
oh, they did.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But he's talking about what they called it.
What
though.
they call it now.
Oh,
yeah,
synonyms.
yeah, right. The states require churches to have trustee boards that are financially responsible.
Correct.
That's right. There are churches. There's a church now who because they don't have a pastor, they're in jeopardy, and they got to put a man in office quick.
Yeah.
Because for legal reasons and for financial reasons.
Correct.
Because of the bank.
Exactly.
They need to have somebody to blame.
Or
somebody to draw money in.
Right.
Yeah. So theocracy, as you mentioned, Alvin, a theocracy is a form of government that is led by God or by a person or persons who claim to rule by divine authority. The word theocracy is a compound word. Use a theo,
God.
and Chrissy, which is a rule, strength, or government. The nation of Israel was to have been a theocracy,
Right.
but
They
they
still-
rejected God's rule
They
over
rejected
them,
him.
and God gave them human kings instead.
And that goes to show you that God will give you something that you don't need, but He give it to you because you still asked Him for it.
That is true.
But let's look at
careful,
it.
Judge.
Let's look at it. They were a theocracy of sorts, but they still were ruled by judges
Yes.
Okay,
prior to
true.
the king.
Yes.
For a certain
Which-
period of time.
Yeah, so you still had the judges because prior to them becoming the nation of Israel, they were more of a theocracy as the children of Israel than they
Correct.
were the nation of Israel.
No, that's good.
Because once they became the nation of Israel, you had the judges in place because as they all broke down into different regions, as the tribes spread out,
Right.
they had to have some kind of leadership, regional leadership.
Yeah.
And they came together. So you can see the samples of politics in the Bible too.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's
Oh,
good. Now, here the Christians did not vote in the early 19. Well, they didn't vote. Period. Okay, especially coming into the 1900s, Billy Graham preached against communism. Okay, and the whole prosperity preaching that we hear today, it's history repeating itself. We preach prosperity in our pulpits. He preached against communism. All right, and so it communism and spirituality went hand to hand then. Prosperity and Christianity go hand in hand today. All right, so because he preached communism back then, 1940s, he caught the attention of a media baron, William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah.
Okay, who built the nation's largest newspaper chain. He was deeply anti-communist. So he got invited to the Edward R. Murrow show, which would be like the who have a popular talk show today.
Like the Oprah of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Graham began to build relationships with these political powers, especially the presidents. Eisenhower used faith as a weapon against communism. So he said people who didn't believe in God were silly. This was President Eisenhower. And so when that happened, church membership by 1960 soared 65%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. There's a fool that says this high there's no God.
Right.
That's it.
Absolutely. So Eisenhower was the one who put under God in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I like him already.
Yeah. Okay. So evangelicals and fundamentals didn't want anything to do with politics since the Scopes Evolution trial of 1920. So politics were dirty, and since Jesus was coming back soon, they figured, why vote?
Right.
So they didn't need it. Most hadn't even registered to vote. All right. And then came Jerry Falwell, the Thompson Road Baptist Church in Virginia, and that kicked off. That started the whole voting.
Jerry.
Yeah. He was against getting involved in civil rights movements. He didn't want to touch communism. He said, stick to the preaching of the gospel and you guys will be okay. And then Francis Schaeffer came on the scene, a fundamentalist. He began to preach against humanism